According to Susan Silby, who is a well-known sociologist and professor at MIT, she did a case study over why women leave the engineering workforce at a higher rate than men do as undergraduates, and it was a project that worked with the National Science Foundation. The study began in 2003 and monitored roughly 700 engineering students from 4 universities, those being the University of MIT, Massachusetts, Olin, and Smith College. They surveyed these students during their 4 years of college and then 5 years post-graduation. And they asked them about their interactions with other students, teachers, and how those interactions changed in class settings and in projects, how they felt during their college culture, and what their occupational and family expectations were for the future. In her article, she wrote 20% of engineering graduates. It's been estimated that nearly 40% of women who earn their engineering degrees either quit or never entered the profession post-graduation. This is a huge percentage and it is a wicked problem that I want to address about the diversity within engineering and how it is mostly a male-predominant field in STEM. When it comes to the world of STEM and engineering, like I had said, it is a huge issue for women in engineering, specifically in college. It's hard to keep bringing women in and graduating them post-college and keeping them in their desired branch due to a series of issues that I will go over later. My name is Savannah Cole, and I'm currently a student at the University of Mount Union, and I am part of the community of being a woman in engineering. My major is civil engineering with a mathematics minor. I'm also part of various orchestral groups on campus as a violinist. I'm a distance runner for the cross country and track team. I'm also involved in Society for Women in Engineering, ASC, American Society for Civil Engineering, and that's why I want to work on this community for my project, and specifically here at Mount Union for the females at Mount Union. My current connection is that I'm currently 1 out of 2 women in my civil engineering graduating class that currently has 12 other males. This ratio is about the same for all the other disciplines at Mount Union as well for engineering and females. Like I had mentioned in the previous slide, my community that I'm looking into is specifically women college students at the University of Mount Union. Now I will go over the community values that they have. According to the National Society for Professional Engineering, which is an association in the United States for licensed PEs, they came up with a PE report that summarizes previous case studies and magazines that they have done over the past 30 years to create a list of values that women have when picking an engineering route at college or for the workforce. The stated values are simply statements that were pulled from other journal submissions and studies, nothing too specific, just a generic list. They came up with 7 that I will now read off. The first being demonstrate an interest in and positive attitudes about engineering. See values in the field of engineering. Demonstrate engineering-related efficiency, embrace a STEM identity, have a strong support network, draw upon social and cultural capital, and feel a sense of belonging. So those are all the 7 that they had came up with. From personal experience, people in the engineering community tend to value knowledge, personal relationships, problem solving, and a strong community that has hard work and ethics in order to help fix the world and make it a better place. They typically have a go-getter attitude as well. From a woman's perspective, I can personally say that we value being treated as an equal. I never want to have special treatment simply because I'm a minority as a female in comparison to being a male. I just want to be given the same opportunity to speak, being a leader, work on complex projects, and being included in intense discussions and planned outside events. If the effort is being made as an engineer, no matter your gender or race, I think that trumps everything. But that's not always taught at a young age, and it's kind of hard to break the cycle. So as a woman, I believe that we value change more, but it is also understanding that not everybody will want this at the same time. So now I will talk about the community statistics at a national level. This information comes from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics for the year 2022, which is part of the U.S. Department of Labor and contains the most up-to-date information about occupations, ethnic percentages, different types of workforce in a table format that is public to everybody on their website. The first statistic that I have stated is from the occupations listed architecture and engineering, which has a total of 3,500 employees, and of that, only 16.1% are women. The next statistic falls under the occupation of civil engineering, and there are 482 total employed, and only 17% are women. I chose that because that's what I personally fall under. It should also be noted that there are 24 occupations that fall under this broad category of architecture and engineering. However, there are 11 categories of these 24 that do not have a percentage for women, and quite frankly, that's really sad, and hopefully it will improve over the next couple years, and is why I am addressing the statistic at a national level. This is now information for the local statistics at Mount Union. This information comes from the Office of Institutional Research, which is a provider for Mount Union on student numbers and university statistics in a form of a table like this or a different type of data set. The top table is information for civil and mechanical engineers for bachelor's earned by academic year, starting from the year 2012 to 2021. You can see that this information only has the 2 subdisciplines, so to give a more generalized idea, I proceeded to the bottom table. This table is undergraduate declared majors by college, and it has more of the subdisciplines like biomedical, computer, and electrical. But it can be seen that over the span of these STEM programs, they did not have total data collection until 2019. In comparison to these two tables, it can be seen that from declared majors coming in to the actual degrees earned, there's a significant drop-off in the numbers, and this is for both men and women. And this is because Mount Union has a fairly new engineering program, so hopefully over the next years, this will continue to grow. But the point of showing this is that you can see that this drop-off is a lot less from declared to actually graduating in your degree. So imagine if we only had specific numbers for women in comparison to men. I believe that this would be significantly different and exponentially smaller just based off of the provided data that we have so far. So now I'm going to talk about the problems that the community faces, the first being diversity. As I had mentioned, Sylvie was a source at the beginning, but as a reminder, she was a sociologist from MIT, and our case study contained about 700 engineering students. She dives into why engineering and the STEM programs are male-dominated and made a very strong argument that efforts are being made at the college level to promote women in STEM, but once they actually reach the university, the efforts aren't as meaningful, and it kind of drives and leads women away from the field. So diversity is a huge issue for this community. Dunspark is a professor that wrote a journal study with 2 other colleagues in the Advances of Engineering Education, which is a journal for education engineering applications. This is a reliable source for the professional engineering world, and the journal basically talked about what motivated women to participate in a specific entrepreneurship program at Penn State University over a 5-year span. The study collected information from a class in the program and had them journal about their motivations and well-being during the school year. Those responses were then compiled into graphs, lists, and were analyzed to come up with statements about these motivations and low number counts. So he argues and concludes that the low numbers are due to motivational standpoints as women in comparison to men, so it's kind of hard to retain these values. The last problem that the community faces is self-confidence and the environment, and this is supported by Mark Crawford, who worked with the University of Virginia and the Society of American Mechanical Engineers, and he did research on the reasoning to bring more women in to STEM programs in engineering and its importance. He went to different schools in the area, observed similar to how a student teacher would, formulated different opinions, and came up with a consensus and results. He discovered that there are a lack of female role models at a young age, and this kind of leads to a misconception on who gets to be an engineer in the future. He goes into more detail about the environment and self-confidence of women being the leading factor of why women are turned around or feel like they don't belong in engineering. A quote that I like from his journal was that he said, in the United States, about 18% to 20% of engineering students are now women, and this is an improvement over the numbers for the past 25 years. And this just kind of stresses the issue more in a single sentence and kind of brings together the idea full circle. So after going over the stated problems, these can be addressed using literacy to promote and keep women in engineering and STEM programs and promoting better role models and environment. I believe the literacy of leadership and inclusion are the biggest contenders when relating to the problem that I have identified. If self-confidence is instilled and promoting the leadership roles for students in college and post-graduation, then I think that here at Mount Union, the numbers of women will rise eventually in engineering and help keep them stay within the field even post-graduation. This literacy can be installed mainly for the students, but I think that it could also even be applied to the administration and professors to build an overall better community for women and just anybody in engineering in general. The first approach to address this literacy was tracking the motivations of women in engineering and STEM programs. This idea came from Densmark's case study, which I had talked about earlier, and the basic goal is to identify the problem at the beginning where the doubts kind of start, and then find a way to be more inspiring and helpful for women. He mentions that if you have an engineering club, that you do have to have both men and women be a part of it. You can't just single out a specific gender. You have to integrate them in order for change to happen. After tracking these motivations, this can lead to more data being collected nationwide and eventually help solve this issue everywhere. On page 15 of his report, it states that males and females are motivated to make a difference, apply theory, participate in exciting real-world projects, and working on multidisciplinary teams and engaging with other cultures. So this is just some of the motivations that he had tracked. The next approach was presented by SWAY, Society of Women Engineering, which is a nonprofit educational service that voices women in technology and educational fields. They had an article in which PhD Brian Rubin from McGill University looked into ways on how to examine your peers, and that could be used as a way to help women succeed in engineering and technology, specifically when transitioning from school to the workforce post-graduation. It was more of an observational data collection of his students, similar to how Selby's case study was, which I had mentioned at the very beginning of this presentation. The first point that Rubin mentions is very similar to Densmark's. You have to treat both men and women with the same type of opportunity and a healthy learning environment. The second thing he mentioned would be in the hiring process. The idea was that if you have a social mentor, this would be more beneficial than a typical school counselor because it would be more personalized. The third idea that he mentioned was for mentoring, was to have assigned study partners in classes and on different projects. That way it eliminates everybody from feeling left out and a chance to integrate in a safe place. The last idea that Rubin talks about is personally my favorite one, and this is to promote peer interactions in the dorms, to have co-ed STEM themed dorms, and that would provide a social atmosphere and make the interactions not feel forced, and you'd be able to do this on your own. The last approach was brought up by Joanne Crawford, who worked with the American Society for Mechanical Engineering. The idea was that if you integrate technology and STEM at a young age, then more boys and girls would have exposure, and the typical stereotypes that are put in the formative years would not be there anymore. The earlier programs would install self-confidence, leadership, and keep more women in engineering for the long run and bring more in as the time goes. He wrote that although universities and high schools are working together to encourage more female students to explore science and engineering, industry also needs to set up more and do more. A commitment to K-12 schools across the country to help engineering and math comes alive needs to happen with enhancing the STEM curriculum. So that is one way that literacy could be involved. I think raising leadership literacy is a great starting point, but it is also up to the women and individuals to participate in the change and want to help in clubs, women willing to tough it out, and men and the predetermined society willing and to be open to change. Not only is this at a college level issue, we would have to address it at a younger age to prevent stereotypes, and then nationally. So basically it would just be a waiting game to see if these new changes to literacy would even work out and improve things over time for women in engineering and STEM programs. Next, then, if we isolate by only promoting women, this may cause a drawback because it is leaving out the males in this field as well. The idea when wanting to be more inclusive is finding a way to better and motivate women and inspire them and to be just important as men. So overall, I think that having peer interactions, having strong role models, and promoting leadership literacy would benefit women in engineering, specifically at Mount Union. Even though there are limitations and roadblocks that I had mentioned, I think it'll still be a great step forward in addressing this wicked problem and helping come up with a solution later on. Thank you.